6 years married. I thought I'd finally figured out what it meant to be a husband, how to read the small silences, when to listen instead of talk, how to show up even when life got messy. That's why I wanted this anniversary to feel right. Not flashy, not extravagant, just right. I spent the whole day prepping our Aspen home for the evening. Lit every candle I could find. Set the dining table with our best plates, the ones we got from her parents our first Christmas together. I even dug out the old recipe for her favorite pasta, the one with the roasted garlic cream sauce I hadn't made since our honeymoon year. Soft jazz played in the background, the kind she used to sway to barefoot in the kitchen. I had wine breathing, flowers in a vase, and a stupid smile on my face because I honestly believed, that we were still in this together. She was late. Now, she'd been late before, plenty of times. Work ran long, clients showed up last minute, traffic through the canyon always found a way to crawl when she was on a schedule. But tonight it stung. Every tick of the clock made my smile feel more like a lie. I adjusted the lighting. I flipped the steak in the pan again even though it was already done. I checked my phone more times than I want to admit. No text. No call. Just absence. When she finally walked through the door, 43 minutes passed when she said she'd be home, everything felt off. She looked stunning, like always. But it was the kind of stunning you plan for someone new. Her lipstick was bolder than usual, the corners of her lips still holding a ghost of a smile that didn't reach me. She wore this sharp, spicy perfume I didn't recognize. Not the soft, citrusy stuff she kept on the bathroom shelf. She had a blazer draped over her arm. Black, slim-cut, clearly men's. And not mine. "Sorry I'm late," she said, brushing a quick kiss against my cheek like she was checking a box. "You wouldn't believe the traffic on 82. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, blazer and all, then headed straight for the bathroom. That was the first time it really hit me how mechanical her movements had become. Like she was running through a routine she'd rehearsed. I stood there in the kitchen, the warmth of the food fading just like my mood. The blazer sat like an accusation on the armchair. I couldn't help it, I walked over. I didn't even touch it at first. Just stared at it. The fabric was nicer than anything I owned. I looked inside the collar. There, stitched in neat cursive, JL, not my initials. Not hers. I told myself it meant nothing. Maybe she'd picked it up at work. Maybe someone left it in her car and she hadn't noticed. I wanted to believe that. But I didn't. She stayed in the bathroom longer than necessary, the water running even though I hadn't heard the shower. I waited. When she came out, her hair was down, makeup slightly faded, eyes tired in a way that didn't seem connected to work. We sat down to eat and I tried to make conversation. Told her about a new client I'd picked up, something about a project in Denver. She nodded, smiled when she remembered to, but it didn't reach her eyes. She pushed the pasta around on her plate, barely eating. Said she wasn't that hungry. "Long day?" I asked. "Yeah," she replied, reaching for her wine glass. "Just drained." There was a silence after that. Not the kind that feels comfortable, just empty. I excused myself to grab something from the bedroom, telling her I'd forgotten the napkins. I didn't need napkins. I needed to look. I knew it was wrong, but I felt like I was unraveling. Her purse was on the dresser. She never used to leave it there, not in the open like that. I hesitated, then opened it slowly. There was a folded card inside. Handwritten. I know I shouldn't have read it, but I did. It mentioned a weekend in Santa Fe. A weekend we never took. Something about that perfect sunrise and can't wait for August. Signed with a name I didn't recognize. No last name, just a letter, J. I stood there, staring at that piece of paper, trying to steady my breathing. I wanted to believe it was old, that it was meant for someone else. But deep down, I knew better. My wife wasn't just drifting. She was somewhere else entirely, heart, mind, maybe body, too. I came back to the table and she was scrolling on her phone, casually sipping her wine. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Just forgot the napkins." I sat down and watched her for the rest of the meal. Not in the romantic way I used to, no, this time it was different. I was searching for cracks, for clues. She laughed once at something on her screen, then quickly turned it off when she noticed me watching. That night, she fell asleep early. No cuddling, no lingering talk in bed, just a quick good night and lights out. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the number of times she'd changed her passcode in the last year. Remembering the extra gym sessions, the sudden weekend trips for training, and the dresses that came home in shopping bags but were never worn in front of me. I wasn't stupid. I'd just been willfully blind. That night something shifted. A chill settled in the pit of my stomach and refused to leave. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But the warmth I tried to recreate, the love I'd been so sure we still shared, had vanished like steam from a cooling plate of food. And in its place? Silence. The next morning, I made her coffee just like I always did, 1 sugar, a splash of oat milk, and a cinnamon stick because she liked the smell more than the taste. She walked into the kitchen, already dressed for work, in a blouse I hadn't seen before. Silk, pale green. It looked expensive. It looked new. Thanks, she said, taking the cup from me with that same polite smile. A stranger's smile. The kind you give a cashier, not your husband. She barely looked at me. That day passed like fog, everything felt muted. My meetings blurred together. I kept checking my phone, staring at her contact name, debating whether to ask about the card. But what would I even say? Hey, found a love note in your bag. Mind explaining? It sounded pathetic just thinking it. Instead, I said nothing. But I watched. And as I watched, everything started falling into place. It started small. I noticed she always took her phone with her. Not just to the bathroom, but even when she walked into the next room. That hadn't always been the case. We used to leave our phones charging in the kitchen at night. Now hers never left her side. She used to leave the gym sweaty and exhausted. Now she came home with her hair freshly done, makeup retouched, smelling like sandalwood and vetiver. Not like sweat. Not like the woman who used to throw her sneakers in the hallway and laugh about how she almost fainted doing burpees. And the gym hours, they'd stretched. What used to be a 45-minute workout turned into tower sessions, sometimes 3. I stayed for yoga, she once told me. It clears my mind. I believed her. Back then. One night I checked her calendar while she was brushing her teeth. It was synced to our shared iCloud. I noticed an event labeled Team Strategy Meeting set for 7:15 p.m. on a Sunday. She didn't work weekends. I tapped the entry. The location was a restaurant downtown. One we had only gone to once on our 3rd anniversary. She said the portions were too small. Not worth it, she had declared back then. But now she was reserving it for work meetings? That's when the pattern started to form in my head. A framework. A map. There were other signs too. Subtle, but once you started seeing them, you couldn't unsee them. She started buying new clothes, ones I never saw her wear at home. One day I found a Nordstrom bag in the trunk of her car, tags still attached to a dress that was a size too small and a style too bold for her usual taste. She always said she hated bodycon dresses. They're too clingy, she used to joke. But someone else must have liked the way she looked in them. I tried to catch her in a lie once, nothing aggressive, just a gentle test. She told me she had a team dinner after work, but when I called the office phone around 7:30 to ask a quick question, the receptionist told me everyone had left by 6. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I asked how the dinner went when she came home around 9:30. She told me it was fine. The pasta was overcooked. She was tired. I nodded, smiled, poured her a glass of wine. Inside, I felt like I was holding a grenade with the pin half pulled. She became different in other ways too. Her laughter, once spontaneous, full of life, sounded rehearsed. Like she was auditioning for a role she wasn't sure she wanted. And she stopped asking me about my day. That one hurt the most. I'd come home ready to vent about a difficult client or a broken deal, and she'd be on the couch, scrolling through her phone, nodding absently. Sometimes she didn't even nod. She used to light candles around the house, hum to herself while folding laundry, drag me into dance-offs in the hallway just because her favorite song came on. That woman was gone. Replaced by someone distant, distracted. Someone who had already left emotionally even if she hadn't packed a bag yet. And maybe I would have kept pretending. Maybe I would have continued playing dumb, clinging to the idea that I was just being paranoid. But the memories kept shifting, resurfacing with new meaning. There was the conference in San Diego 2 months ago, the one she said had no guest tickets. I remembered offering to fly out with her. I had time off saved up and we could have made a mini vacation of it. She shut it down fast. It's just work, she said. It won't be fun. But I remembered now she came back with a sunburn. She doesn't sunbathe. Or the night we were supposed to visit her sister's new place and she canceled last minute claiming a migraine. I ended up going alone. Her sister asked where she was, said she'd texted her that morning and she seemed fine. I brushed it off. But I remembered now how she came home that night around 11 claiming she fell asleep at the office. Wearing a different top than the one she left in. The realization was slow and sickening. She was building walls. Not all at once, no, it was brick by brick. Changing passcodes. Secretive phone behavior. Picking fights about small things to create space. Missing birthdays of people we both cared about. Opting out of plans she used to love. It was also carefully disguised as stress, burnout, a need for independence. But I saw it now. She wasn't pulling away from the world. She was pulling away from me. One night, I opened our shared laptop to check my email and noticed the browser had been cleared. Not just history, everything. No saved passwords, no recent tabs. It was a clean slate, like someone had erased their tracks. I knew her well enough to know she wasn't tech-savvy enough to do that accidentally. That's when I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. I started watching more closely, taking note. I wasn't looking for drama, I was looking for truth. The truth of what my life had become and how long I'd been living inside a story someone else had already rewritten. We were still living in the same house, still eating dinner at the same table. But we weren't us anymore. She was somewhere else, emotionally distant, her gaze drifting toward places I couldn't reach. And me? I was quietly preparing for a storm I hadn't yet named but already knew was coming. I wasn't looking to catch her in the act. I needed to be wrong. I prayed I was misreading everything, that the lies were in my head, not in her home. But reality doesn't care about prayers. It just waits for you to open your eyes. It was a Thursday evening when everything finally came together. The weather had just turned. The kind of crisp fall air that used to make us want to bundle up and walk the neighborhood with hot drinks, pointing out houses we pretended we'd move into one day. That night, I went outside to water the plants, a simple habit, just something to do when I couldn't sit still anymore. I noticed right away that our car wasn't in the driveway. That was strange because she'd texted me earlier saying she was home early and lying down for a bit. I walked further down the street, pretending to stretch my legs when I saw it, our silver SUV parked at the end of the block under a street lamp, tucked away like it was trying not to be noticed. I slowed down, staying in the shadows. As I got closer, I could make out two figures inside, her in the passenger seat and a man I didn't recognize in the driver's seat. They were talking quietly. At first, I told myself it could be innocent. But then he leaned in. His hand touched her neck. Not in a casual, friendly way, no, this was deliberate in asterisk mate. The kind of touch that says, I know this body. Her head tilted slightly toward him. She smiled. And just like that, every doubt I'd been clinging to disintegrated. I didn't confront them. I didn't make a scene. I turned around and walked back to the house, heart pounding in my ears. I sat on the bottom step inside, staring at the floor. My chest felt like it was being crushed from the inside out. There was no pretending anymore. No rationalizing. No more theories. There was only fact. She was cheating on me. That night, I waited until she got home. She came through the door like nothing had happened. Gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, told me she was feeling better, then went upstairs to shower. I sat there on the couch, staring at her coat slung across the chair. I wanted to scream. Instead, I picked up my laptop. I'd seen enough TV to know where to start. Her phone was locked, but her laptop was fair game. I opened her browser. Most of her recent history had been cleared again. But she had left herself logged into our shared Google account. From there, it was a simple click into her Google Maps timeline. I don't know if you've ever looked at someone's location history, but it's revealing in a way nothing else is. It showed where she'd gone, how long she stayed, and even what mode of transport she'd taken. I filtered back through the last few weeks. The timeline lit up with stops she never told me about. Same place, same pattern. Hotel. Park. Restaurant. Repeat. It matched perfectly with every late meeting, every extra gym class, every lie she'd woven into our conversations. And then there were the photos. She must have forgotten to delete them, or maybe she never imagined I'd dig this deep. They were in a folder labeled Work Trip 22 buried in her cloud storage. I opened it and immediately wished I hadn't. Pictures of her and the same man, laughing in a hotel room, posing at a beachside bar, walking hand in hand in a place that definitely wasn't San Diego. The metadata said it was Tulum. I stared at one photo for what felt like hours. Her in a sundress I'd never seen before, sitting on a balcony, his arm around her shoulders like it belonged there. This wasn't some drunken mistake. This was orchestrated. Sustained. In asterisk mate. She hadn't just cheated. She had built a second life. I shut the laptop, hands shaking, heart hollow. You think you'll explode when you find out. That you'll break things, yell, demand answers. But the truth is, it's quiet. There's a numbness that creeps in when you finally see it for what it is. Because part of you dies, right there on the spot, the part that's still believed. I spent the next day in a haze. I didn't eat. I barely spoke. I went through the motions, emails, calls, a meeting with a contractor I don't even remember, but my mind kept flashing back to that street lamp, that touch on her neck, those pictures. She texted me that afternoon. Thinking about you. Want to grab dinner later? I stared at the screen, fingers hovering above the keyboard. She was thinking about me while the scent of another man was probably still clinging to her skin. I didn't reply. That night, I checked again. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. I checked the hotel's name, matched it to her location data. Cross-referenced her work trip to Chicago with the hotel reservation confirmation sitting in her email inbox. It wasn't Chicago. It was Los Cabos. 3 nights. 1 king bed. 2 guests. Every question I'd been too scared to ask was now answered. Where did she go when she said she was working late? To him. What happened on those trips I wasn't invited to? Him. Why had she stopped looking at me like I mattered? Because I didn't. Not to her. Not anymore. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than just proof, I needed a plan. I started saving everything. Screensh *TS, photos, location history. I created a separate folder, encrypted and backed up, and titled it Truth. I knew if I confronted her too early, she'd gaslight me, twist it, cry, beg. But I wasn't giving her that chance. Not until I was ready. And the more I looked, the more I found. There were Venmo transactions, payments labeled coffee or parking sent to the same guy. I found reviews she'd left under a fake Yelp account for restaurants they'd visited. I even found an email she'd drafted to a friend, one she hadn't sent, where she wrote, I didn't mean to fall for him, but I can't stop. I feel alive with him in ways I don't anymore at home. At home. That's what I was now. A location. Not a person. Not a husband. Just a base to return to between lies. And yet I said nothing. I smiled when she walked in the door. I asked about her day. I let her think I was still the clueless, trusting fool she'd decided to leave emotionally months ago. I watched her move around our house, and wondered how long she planned to keep this up. How long she thought she could live in 2 worlds before they collapsed into each other. But I wasn't going to let it collapse on me. I was going to burn it down on my terms in my time. And when I did, there'd be nothing left for her to crawl back to. There's a moment after the truth lands where everything inside you goes quiet. Not peaceful, just still, like the eye of a storm. That's where I was the day after I confirmed everything. No shouting. No confrontation. Just silence. A silence I intended to keep. The thing about knowing the truth is it changes your posture. The way you move. The way you breathe around them. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't wondering. I knew. And now every smile she offered felt like theater. Every casual text, every routine question, it all became part of her performance. But I had stopped clapping. I started with small things. Her coat, which had always hung next to mine on the entryway rack, I moved it to the farthest hook. I removed her extra pillow from our bed, left it on the floor beside the nightstand. Subtle shifts, nothing obvious. But enough for the atmosphere to change. Enough for her to feel the space widening between us. And she did. The first few days she didn't notice, or at least pretended not to. But I could see it in her eyes. Confusion. Discomfort. That nagging sense of imbalance she couldn't quite name. She tried to fill it with noise. Want to watch a movie tonight? I was thinking we could hike this weekend, just the 2 of us. I've been missing our old routines. Let's cook together like we used to. I nodded. Smiled politely. Never committed. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped pretending to care. And that, more than anything, rattled her. Because the version of me she'd constructed in her head, the one she manipulated with half-truths and deflections, that version was gone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I was just done. I started moving her things out of shared spaces. Her shoes, once scattered under the entry bench, were neatly placed in her closet. Her books, which had once taken up half of our shared shelf, now lived in tidy stacks on the desk in the guest room. She didn't ask questions. Not out loud. But she lingered more in doorways. Paused before walking into rooms. Sensed the shift even if she didn't yet understand its depth. I began updating passwords, joint streaming accounts, our bank logins, utilities. Quiet changes. Ones she wouldn't notice until she needed access. I wasn't being spiteful. I was being methodical. Strategic. Because love, as it turns out, doesn't vanish in one dramatic explosion. It leaks out slowly. And I had finally turned off the faucet. One night, she came home later than usual. Said she had stayed after work for a team brainstorm. I didn't nod. I didn't respond. I just looked at her and waited. She trailed off mid-sentence. Another night, she stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed, watching me wash dishes. Are we okay? She asked. I dried my hands. Looked her in the eye. Are you asking because you care or because I'm not reacting the way you expected? Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned and walked away. That's when I knew she could feel it. The shift wasn't just mine anymore. It was in the air between us. Tangible. Thick. Heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. She started staying out later. At first, she made excuses, last-minute dinners, work emergencies, catching up with old friends. But eventually, even the excuses stopped. She just disappeared in the evenings, then reappeared like a ghost, slipping under the covers without a word. I stopped wondering where she went. I stopped checking her location. I didn't need to. I already had the answers. All I cared about now was creating distance. Not physical, but emotional. Psychological. Strategic. I removed myself from our rituals. We used to share a Sunday morning tradition, coffee, bagels, and crosswords. That stopped. I started waking up early, driving to a small cafe across town, staying there for hours just to avoid sharing the silence with her. I stopped wearing my wedding ring. She noticed. One night, her eyes flicked down to my hand as we sat across from each other during dinner. I watched her notice. Watched her choose not to say anything. And still, I said nothing. She cried once quietly in the bathroom. I heard the sobs through the door, muffled by a towel. Maybe she realized things were slipping. Maybe she missed the comfort of what we used to be. But I didn't go to her. I didn't knock. I let the silence comfort her the way I used to. I started seeing a lawyer. I didn't tell her. I didn't leave any trace. But every detail was falling into place. Accounts separated. Documentation organized. Evidence cataloged. It wasn't revenge, it was preparation. Because one day she'd walk into this house and find that everything she thought was stable had already shifted beneath her feet. We existed like strangers in our own home. Sharing space, not a life. Our conversations, if you could call them that, were surface level. Can you grab milk on your way home? Your sister called, she wants to set up a dinner. The electric bill came. It's higher this month. No affection. No arguments. Just logistics. And it suited me fine. Because you can't argue with someone who's already packed their heart and given it to someone else. I noticed she started dressing differently even at home. Heels in the kitchen. Makeup just to sit on the couch. Like she was still performing for someone, maybe him, maybe herself. Maybe the version of herself she needed to become to justify what she was doing. But it didn't matter. Because I wasn't looking at her anymore. Not really. I was looking through her, through the mask, through the habits, through the space she used to fill in my life. And all I saw was absence. A void where love used to live. One night, she came to bed and touched my arm gently. I didn't flinch. I didn't respond. I just lay there, eyes closed, heart still. You haven't said I love you in weeks, she whispered. I opened my eyes. Stared at the ceiling. That's because I don't lie. She didn't say another word. Just turned over, facing away from me. It was quiet after that. And the quiet, for the first time in a long time, felt like home. The final step wasn't loud. It didn't come with screaming or shattered glass or dramatic exits. It came in silence, the kind that had settled into our home like dust. Thick, unshakable. I think she thought it would drag on indefinitely, that we'd keep limping through this charade for months, maybe longer. But I'd had enough. The day I finalized, everything started like any other. She left around 8 a.m., dressed in a business casual outfit that tried too hard. She kissed me on the cheek out of habit, not affection. I gave her nothing in return, not even a nod. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care anymore. The moment the door closed, I moved. I'd arranged it all ahead of time. Movers came at 9 o'clock sharp. Polite, fast, and discreet. Every single item that belonged to her, every shoe, photo, book, sweater, mug, was packed and labeled. I'd spent days preparing, identifying every trace of her existence, deciding what would stay and what would be gone. There was no anger in it. Just precision. Control. Her things went into a climate-controlled storage unit 5 miles away. I paid the first 2 months in advance. Included a printed list of contents. Even left a note taped to the front of the first box. You'll find everything you left behind. This house is no longer one of them. By noon, the place felt cleaner. Not just physically, spiritually. Her scent was gone. Her presence faded. I replaced our framed wedding photo on the hallway wall with an old landscape painting I'd forgotten I loved. It used to hang in my college apartment. I always said I'd find a place for it when we got a house together. Funny how things come full circle. Next, I changed the locks. Not just the front door. The side entry. The garage. Even the gate. Everything was replaced, rekeyed, and reprogrammed. I stood in the driveway and tested them twice. When I stepped back inside, it felt like I'd sealed off a chapter. Her access to our joint bank accounts was cut off by 2 p.m. I had already opened new accounts in my name, redirected all auto payments, closed the old credit card we used for groceries and weekend trips. There was nothing she could charge now. Nothing she could share. She wouldn't even know until she tried to swipe the card. Around 3 o'clock, I poured myself a drink, bourbon, neat. Sat at the dining room table and stared at the empty seat across from me. For a second, I imagined her walking through the door, pretending everything was normal, tossing her keys in the bowl, asking what was for dinner. But the seat stayed empty. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I thought was real. And that version didn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. At 5:47 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the upstairs window as she approached the door, tried her key once, twice, 3 times. Her body stiffened. She stepped back, looked at the handle like it had betrayed her. Then the panic started. She rang the doorbell. Knocked. Called my phone. Texted. Hey, I think something's wrong with the door. Are you home? Why is my key not working? I didn't answer. Instead, I waited until the knocking stopped. Until she sat down on the porch, furiously typing something I knew would show up in my inbox within seconds. She tried calling again. I turned my phone face down and walked away. By 6:30, she was gone. And in her place? One voicemail. I waited until the next morning to listen. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe? Or closure. Her voice was quiet, raw. Not angry, not defensive. Just tired. Noah, I don't know what this is. I don't know what you're doing. But if this is some punishment, if you think this will make me feel something, please know I already do. I've made mistakes, I know that. I've done things I can't undo. But you shutting me out like this. I didn't think it would hurt this much. I guess I deserve that. There was a pause. A deep breath. If you're really done, if this is it, then I understand. I do. But I never meant to break us. I swear I didn't. Click. I never played it again. She never showed up at the house after that. Never called again. Just one last message and then nothing. It was like she'd finally understood. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't waiting for her to come clean. I already had the truth. What I needed was distance, freedom, quiet. And I got it. In the days that followed, the house took on a new rhythm. I slept through the night without listening for the garage door. I cooked meals for one, played music louder, opened all the windows just because I could. I worked from home in silence and realized how much I'd missed hearing my own thoughts. Neighbors noticed. Everything okay? One of them asked, peering over the fence while watering his lawn. Better than it's been in a long time, I replied. And I meant it. I started clearing out more than just her belongings. Digital files, photo albums, shared playlists. I cleaned up the corners of my life where she still lingered like a song stuck on loop. Some things I deleted. Some I backed up and stored on an external drive, sealed, labeled, and locked away in a drawer. Not because I wanted to revisit them, but because I wanted them out of my space. You don't realize how heavy a memory is until you finally put it down. One afternoon, I passed by our wedding album, still sitting on the bottom shelf of the hallway bookcase. I pulled it out, flipped through a few pages. There we were, frozen in time, laughing, dancing, pretending we knew what forever meant. I didn't cry. I didn't feel much of anything. Just a quiet, final acknowledgement of a story that had already ended. I closed the album and slid it into a donation box. Someone else could reuse the leather. The story was no longer mine to hold. There's this thing people say when relationships end, we grew apart. But we didn't. She grew apart. I stood still, holding out my hand, waiting for someone who had already walked away. And when I finally stopped reaching, when I stopped chasing a shadow of what used to be, the peace came fast. And it was real. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. It felt earned. 3 weeks after I changed the locks and cleared her from the house, she showed up at my office. It was a Friday, mid-morning, and I had just stepped out of a meeting when I saw her through the glass walls, standing at reception, shifting awkwardly in heels that didn't match her outfit. She looked like someone who had dressed in a hurry, hoping confidence would mask the panic. Our receptionist buzzed me. There's someone here to see you, says it's personal. I stepped out. She turned, and for a second, we both just froze. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara clinging to the edges, hair pulled back messily. She looked tired. Unpolished. Like the version of herself I used to see after a long trip back when we were still us. Noah, she said, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't say anything. Just nodded toward the small private conference room. She sat. I stayed standing. I'm not here to beg, she started. I needed to say something. I crossed my arms. You already said enough. I know. And I deserve that, she said, hands trembling slightly in her lap. But I need you to know I ended it. With him. It's over. I let the silence do the heavy lifting. She glanced up, eyes pleading. It wasn't love, Noah. I thought it was something I needed, something different, but it wasn't. It was noise. Chaos. I lost who I was. You didn't lose her, I said. You left her behind. She looked like she'd been slapped. You think I'm beyond forgiveness? I don't think about you at all. That landed harder than I expected. Her eyes welled up and she nodded slowly as if confirming something she already suspected. I wrote you a letter, she said, reaching into her bag and pulling out a sealed envelope. She slid it across the table. You don't have to read it. I needed to leave something behind. I stared at it for a moment, then pushed it back toward her. I don't need it. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I didn't flinch. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. This wasn't a movie. There would be no reunion, no second act. Just closure. Goodbye, Noah, she said, voice cracking. She stood, clutched her bag, and left without another word. I watched her walk away and felt nothing. A month later, I moved out of Aspen. I bought a small place near a quiet lake in Utah. Nothing fancy. Just wood, stone, and stillness. I work remotely now, spend my mornings on the porch with coffee and the sound of water lapping against the dock. Some days I don't speak to anyone at all. And it's perfect. I started building furniture with my hands, tables, benches, chairs. It's slow work. Honest work. Something about carving a piece of wood into something functional feels like a form of prayer. I don't check her social media. Don't ask friends about her. Don't scroll through old texts. I don't need to. In the top drawer of my nightstand is a sealed letter. The one she tried to give me. I never opened it. Never needed to. The truth was never in her words, it was in her choices. And those said more than any apology ever could. Sometimes people ask why I left so cleanly without a fight. The answer is simple. The moment she looked someone else in the eye and called him a real man, I already knew. Knew who she was. Knew who I wasn't. Knew what had to be done. Everything that followed was just confirmation. Now, my days are quiet. My nights are peaceful. And for the first time in years, I'm not holding my breath. There's no revenge, no resentment, just release. She chose her path. And I finally chose mine.